Well, the far-right National Rally did very well in the first round with 33.15% of the vote. That was something of a fright for Macron, and the second place was taken by the left, and that put his party, his coalition, his group into third place. Now, that's what's caused such alarm here. So we could be seeing a situation where the so-called far right is about to claim a very big victory, that there could be a prime minister who is in opposition effectively to the president. And this is a situation in France that they call cohabitation, where there is then some difficulty for legislation to take place and to be made going forwards, because obviously there's that gridlock that can occur within the legislative system.
Tell us a little bit about the leader of this far-right party. He's quite young, 28 years old.
Indeed, and I think that he's appealed to a broader selection of people. So Jordan Bardella is really part of the success story here, but we also can't forget Le Pen herself, whose father indeed came before her. And what we see through this pattern from him to his daughter, now to Bardella, is that there is really a softening of the image of the party, which has made them more appealing, made the party more votable for regular people. So as much as we're calling them the far right, there are plenty who don't feel that that is necessarily the right way to look at the party anymore. Instead, maybe it's more of a populist party, the kind of which we're seeing around the world, gathering increasing levels of popularity because these parties do appeal perhaps to the masses, dealing with issues that other parties have been afraid to touch and afraid to deal with, afraid to talk about. I'm talking, for example, about immigration, about poverty and social difficulties due to immigration, and people's effectively not having as much money in their pockets and feeling that part of the reason for that is immigration and the like. So I think that Bardella and Le Pen have done an impressive job of rebranding the party and making it more attractive to younger voters, also to female voters, so that this is now an option that they feel they can vote for.
Let's zoom out for a moment, if you will, and talk to me a little bit about how significant these ongoing elections are, not only domestically, but also internationally.
Well, the elections are highly significant because they could result in this first far-right-led government in France since the Second World War, and that would mark a dramatic shift in French politics, and that could have far-reaching implications for France's domestic and foreign policies. Remember that, of course, there's a level of Euroscepticism as well that this party speaks to, and that's not something that Macron particularly would have been pleased to predict as a result of this election. So that, in effect, will also have some knock-on effect for how France positions itself internationally. And indeed, when we come to immigration, that is something which has wider-reaching repercussions than just within France itself. Remember that some of these migrants come into France in the south from Italy, and then many make their way through France in the north towards the UK, where I am, and that's a political hot potato here in the United Kingdom. So it will doubtless have some effect on that flow of migrants from and to those countries. So in general, I think this could be something which has much more wide-reaching effects than just within France, and this could be something which has deep effects also within France.
Indeed, and within France, we've seen that this is quite a tense moment in the country. We've seen violence spill onto the streets. How divided is France right now?
Well, France is quite divided, as are various parts of the world and various parts of Europe in particular. So we know that France is deeply divided, as evidenced by those thousands of protesters against the far right's rise. And that division reflects broader societal fractures and differing visions for the country's future, which are exacerbated by economic pressures and cultural tensions. So France, like many other places in the world, is suffering from those kinds of divisions.
You know, yesterday we were talking on this show about the UK elections, and there was the question about why Rishi Sunak decided to call a snap election when there was growing discontent within the country. I guess the same could be asked about President Emmanuel Macron, why he decided to call this election even though the far-right party was gaining momentum.
I think in both those cases, the decision for a snap election, both in the case of the UK with Rishi Sunak and in France with Emmanuel Macron, was a foolish move. We can now see for those two people. Neither has done well out of the decision, but I think it was also a sign of desperation. And for Macron's part, he's something of a gambler. This was a big political gamble, and it's one that's backfired. It could be the beginning of the end for him. He does have years left in position as the president, but some are even saying that he should resign if this goes badly. It is possible for him to stay there, even with Prime Minister who is at odds with him. That has happened before in France's history. But I think that the decision for those snap elections was a result of his humiliating defeat in the European Parliament elections, where the RN outperformed his party significantly. And this move was aimed at regaining control. But I think it's introduced that massive risk of political instability and potential cohabitation government, and that's not something that he necessarily would have wanted. I think that this tendency for populations to vote for more populist, more right-wing parties who are talking about immigration shows that either those parties are going to start to try to deal with those problems, or more mainstream parties have to take the lead that they're being set by those parties. They have to start dealing with it themselves as well, because it's a real problem, and people aren't necessarily racist or somehow extremist for wanting to deal with the issue. But if that's the only place they can go to get a political response that they feel is valid, voters are showing they're going to go there.
Yeah. And there are themes there that could be taken and looked at in Canada and the United States as well, and politics in both of those countries. Jonathan, appreciate your insight and analysis tonight. That is political commentator Jonathan Sacerdoti. He joined us today from London, England.